Ladies and gentlemen, and so the news just keeps on keeping on, and my goodness, we've got some crazy news coming in hot for Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU. Apparently, there is a new deal in place, and it might have even been confirmed already. Whether or not it is confirmed, we're going to find out this Sunday at D23, and we will definitely either hear something in terms of Spider-Man being back in the MCU, or of course, if we don't hear anything, that's probably going to be a pretty bad sign in the sense that this deal did not actually get signed. However, there is a deal in place, and that's what we're going to talk about, that has been offered from Disney's side to Sony, and it seems like a much better deal from both from a business perspective and just from a creative standpoint. It looks like it might just be able to capture the best of both worlds. Both companies will have a lot to gain here, and we're going to discuss all of this in just one moment. But first, guys, don't forget to hit that like button down below. And in addition to that, this is going to be a very dense video, so I just want to warn you guys, there's going to be a lot of details here. We're going to talk about how many movies. We're going to talk about the specifics of what the movies are supposedly going to be about. We're going to discuss truly a lot of information, so just keep that in mind, that there's going to be a ton of info that is going to be covered here. And I want to go on ahead and also give a shout out to TiVo, I hope I'm saying that right, TVO, from the Lords of the Long Box YouTube channel, because apparently this information, or this particular first reported deal, was reported by him. So again, I just want to give credit where credit is due. So there you go. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, let's run through the specifics of this deal. Let's go on ahead and discuss what this is all about. And of course, we're going to go on ahead and get started with the fact that this is indeed supposed to be a six-picture deal, which means 6 movies will be added into the MCU universe starring Tom Holland as Spider-Man for this particular 6-picture deal, with an option for a 7th movie. So that's already insane, because the last deal was 5 films with an option for a 6th. Obviously, we never got that particular option to come through. So because of that, it seems like this particular deal will have an extra film added to it in order to conclude the last trilogy. So if you didn't know, obviously we had Spider-Man Homecoming, then we had Spider-Man Far From Home, and they definitely set it up for a 3rd trilogy movie to kind of, I guess, tie that particular story all together. So this would include that particular film in this deal. So let's run through it. With the 6 pictures / 7 pictures, I'm going to give you guys both setups and what is rumored to happen. So first and foremost, the rumor is that they would go on ahead and obviously conclude that next storyline with Spider-Man and the events of Far From Home. I still don't want to spoil like the very end scene, because again, maybe you haven't seen it, but something very major happens at the very conclusion in the last credit scenes for Spider-Man. It's massive news, and just the way that it concludes and everything is absolutely insane. So that would then tie into a 3rd Spider-Man movie set in that time frame, basically taking place right after the events of Far From Home. Then they would then make 3 more solo Spider-Man movies. So this would be 3 more movies in which Sony would go on ahead and let Marvel obviously have the creative right, but Spider-Man gets to be a part of the MCU. MCU characters get to be in the movies, just like Nick Fury was in Far From Home, and so on and so forth. And Iron Man was in the Homecoming movie. So basically a similar formula to what we have seen so far. Now, so that brings us to basically 4 total solo movies. The other 2 / 3 films would be an additional appearances in Avengers types films. Now, from what I was able to gather, I heard that a lot of people were reporting on this being like, oh, he's going to be in 2 more Avengers movies. From what I've heard, and the information that's been out there and things like that, just as far as like rumor mill, I've personally heard that it's not necessarily going to be Avengers movies, meaning like they're literally going to be titled Avengers something or another, but a part of team up type films. So let's put it that way. So it might be a Spider-Man and several other characters teaming up as, I don't know, like Defenders, or just another classification. So basically him being a part of an Avengers-esque film. So those would be the other appearances. The 2 to 3 other films would be those particular titles. Now, of course, previously, one of the biggest holdups of this particular new deal that they were trying to put together was the fact that Marvel Studios wasn't really putting up any of the money to finance the solo Spider-Man movies, and yet they came to Sony and said, hey, we want 50% of the profits, and that's what we feel we deserve. Well, now the new deal as follows. Marvel Studio will indeed co-finance all the Spider-Man related movies, and notice how the information that came out, it didn't just come out as Spider-Man movies, it came out as Spider-Man related movies, and we're going to talk about that as well, because that is massive news in my opinion. So we're going to discuss that here in just one moment, but they will go on ahead and co-finance all Spider-Man related movies for 30% of the full profits. Previously they wanted 50%, so now it's a much more favorable deal, which I think is absolutely fantastically doable, especially because Sony and Disney would each be taking an equal amount of risk relative to the reward that they would be getting from the film, which makes it a fair deal, and it makes it a deal that makes sense for both companies, and ultimately the best is for us, the consumers, because we get to enjoy those characters that we love all in one giant toy box. So with that in mind, that is not all, because here is some of the other elements that were discussed as far as the actual business end. So Sony would continue to have distribution rights for the films, which is a huge deal because obviously that's what they paid for, is the distribution rights of the movies. But Disney will then acquire exclusive digital and online rights specifically for Disney Plus. Now, if you don't know, Disney Plus is a subscription-based service that Disney will be launching later on this year, November 12th. I don't know if it's worldwide. I know that it's Canada and the US on November 12th, but I'm not 100% certain if it will be hitting the UK and other markets at the exact same time. But regardless, let's say November up to maybe April, like a 6-month window in which they will be releasing this new program, this new subscription type program called Disney Plus. Now, if you don't know, every giant big conglomerate that is producing media and entertainment in some way, shape, or form is definitely looking at streaming as the future and are starting to position themselves, some more aggressively than others, to succeed in that field. Disney has positioned itself very well to succeed by the fact that they own an insane library of content, an insane amount of IP, and just quite possibly the most powerful brands on the planet in terms of entertainment and media. So I don't really think that they would fail if they didn't get the support from the Spider-Man mythos in the universe, but I think that this is a huge get if they manage to have the online and distribution rights for TV networks. Because again, when Disney purchased Fox this past year, well, that's when the deal concluded, and we found out that they would not only be buying Fox, like their library of content, they also obviously bought things like their channels, like FX and several different other stations that Fox had owned. So that's a big deal because they need to have content. They need to be able to produce pieces of information and pieces of entertainment for all of these networks. And now they would have the ability to go on ahead and air Spider-Man related content on those different networks. They could have aired before on just their Disney stuff, but now they have all these other things that they need to go on ahead and provide content for. So this is a huge get for Disney. However, we're going to talk about what Sony gets in return. So here is on the flip side what Sony is going to go on ahead and get from this particular deal, and that would be the fact that Sony will be allowed and will be given permission to go on ahead and produce live action TV shows set in the Spider-Verse, which is massive. So if you didn't know, up until this point, one of the huge and biggest misunderstandings of the Sony Spider-Man license deal is that a lot of people have assumed that Sony owns Spider-Man. No, they simply own the movie rights for Spider-Man. That's what they own. That's why when people have told me before, like they were like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense why Spider-Man PS4 is not released on any other console. Of course, that totally makes sense. It's like, what are you talking about? They don't own the video game rights. It does not belong to Sony. They don't own Spider-Man's video game appearances. They could own, if you wanted to make a Spider-Man movie game, yes, there's probably involvement there of Sony approving that and being involved in co-licensing or something along those lines, creating an agreement. But if you wanted to just do a separate Spider-Man game, That's something that Marvel and Disney itself would be able to control. So that does not really make much sense as far as like people's misunderstandings of that particular license. Is that a lot of people assumed that Sony full out owns Spider-Man and they could do whatever they want with the brand. That's not the case. In fact, there's some interesting details that we're going to talk about in just a little bit as well. Let's take a bit of a breather here just because honestly, like I said, this is going to be a very dense video and I wanted to throw it together as quickly as possible because this is just breaking right now and it's a huge, huge deal, of course, in regards to all of this happening. So with that in mind, let's get back on track here and basically Sony will now be able to go on ahead and create Spider-Verse related properties as TV shows, as live action TV shows. So that's what the license would be. It's not animated or anything like that. I'm sure they could probably produce some animated shows and such already, and they've already got things in the pipeline, I'm sure. But now they will be able to go on ahead and create live action content as well, which is a huge deal because now they're able to go on ahead and be like, okay, let's create a Kraven the Hunter TV show, or I don't know, let's think of like a Superior Spider-Man as Doc Ock. Like that'd be a cool show. Maybe he starts off as Doc Ock, slowly works his way up into this alternate dimension version of Spider-Man called Superior Spider-Man, and that would be a cool idea. So things like that will now become a possibility thanks to this particular licensing deal. Now, the other cool element is that Marvel will agree to bring in Venom into the MCU, which means that if you're a huge fan of Tom Hardy, I'm assuming they're not going to recast him or anything like that because he did an excellent job. Personally, for me, I thought the Venom movie's like a 6.5 out of 10. Like, it's not an excellent film in my opinion, but it was a fun movie, so I can't really hate on it all that much. I know some people absolutely despise that movie, but I also personally know two people who absolutely love that film. So I'm sure for those of you that are fans of Tom Hardy and Venom as a whole, you would love to see the appearances of Venom in the MCU and be included as part of the MCU, and this deal would allow for that to happen. So we could see Venom in a movie with Spider-Man and Deadpool and the X-Men. Like, it just sounds so awesome and so epic. So this would be huge news. The other thing that is going to be another element of this deal is the fact that Marvel Studio has offered to go on ahead and do the exact same type of deal of 6 pictures, 7th option, different solos, different structures basically, but they would go on ahead and co-finance all live action Spider-Verse spin-off movies under the exact same deal. That's huge. So for those of you that are like, I've always wanted a Miles Morales movie, now it can happen, and now it could be a part of the MCU with co-financing. Same type of deal that they have for the Spider-Man movie, they would have for the Spider-Verse, which is epic. Spider-Gwen, that's possible. I don't know. I'm trying to think like of any other character that's like Spider-Man specific. Like, I don't know, Scorpion, Rhino, whatever it is. Like, those characters and those projects will now, Morbius, like the talked about Morbius movie. If they want to do that, now it would be part of the MCU and it would be co-financed and helmed by Marvel, which is huge. So that's a big, giant piece of information in this deal. Now, before we wrap things up, because this is already insanely dense and there's so much to cover, and of course on Sunday, as soon as that panel happens for D23 for Marvel, once we either hear this news or some sort of news, I'll definitely make an updated video that will be a lot more polished and everything. I just wanted to get some gameplay behind this recording just so you guys can get the information. But the other details that were released, the second trilogy of films will be focused on the solo films for Spider-Man will be focused on his college years. So that third movie will kind of conclude the home saga, like those 3 movies, like Homecoming, Far From Home, and whatever the third one will be called. And then the other 3 solo movies are going to start a new saga that will be set kind of in the college years. And apparently, and this is a really cool tidbit, it's going to actually introduce Firestar and Iceman into the Spider-Man and MCU universe, which is awesome because, of course, if you don't know, there used to be this like old cartoon show of Spider-Man and his amazing friends. It was really cheesy. It was like way before my time, so I didn't watch it either. And it's definitely cheap. Well, sorry, I guess I shouldn't say, well, it is cheesy for sure, but maybe if you grew up on it, I'm sure you look back on it a lot more as nostalgic than cheesy. But regardless, it's just cool that they would kind of like have the tip of the cap of that. And plus, it would introduce X-Men characters like Iceman and Firestar into the MCU, which would be cool because that obviously means that we'll slowly get a rollout of different X-related characters in the MCU movies as well. So, again, I do want to also preface this with the fact that there was a huge push from Tom Holland about remaining in the MCU. Apparently, he made like it very, very, very obvious to Sony that he wants to be a part of the MCU. In addition to that, it did seem like, again, this deal might have been confirmed on Instagram by Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. as they tweeted out pictures of the two of them on like a hike or something like that, or not tweeted out, I guess, Instagrammed, posted images of the two of them on a hike. And then interestingly, it was tagged as "We did it, Mr. Stark." So maybe that confirms that this deal not only has already been in place, but it might have already been signed and will be announced at D23. So again, we're all going to go on ahead and anticipate the Saturday panel, and we're going to go on ahead and obviously wait here to get the information on whether or not this deal has come together. Hopefully it did, and hopefully we'll be able to go on ahead and say that Spider-Man, along with his insane library of Spider-Verse characters, will be joining the MCU. Final tidbit that I want to mention here, which I actually did not know was part of their original deal. It's interesting that if Sony is purchased by any other conglomerate or any other company, the Spider-Man movie rights immediately roll back to Disney, which is so interesting because I genuinely did not know that. And that really does throw a kind of a monkey wrench into the situation, because one of the appeals of, like, if you remember the rumors of Apple, let's say, buying Sony, which I don't believe, but let's say Apple or Amazon or someone buys Sony, right? Or they're interested in purchasing Sony. One of the big appeals would be the fact that you would get Spider-Man's movie rights. Well, I guess that's no longer the case, because it seems like the previous details have revealed to us that the contract that they signed before does not allow for Sony to maintain movie rights should they be bought, which is really, really interesting. And I would really love to see like the actual phrasing and how that's all worded, because it'd be interesting to see from a legal perspective how that would play out. But regardless, that is all the information. Ton of dense news, a ton of news with this deal. Again, as you can hear, it's not just something that's like randomly thrown out there. This is a pretty extensive amount of information for the overall picture of the MCU, Spider-Man, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and of course the other pieces of the Spider-Verse like Tom Hardy's Venom and whatever else might be coming down the pipeline, whether it be the Morbius movie, the Sinister Six movie, things like this will now possibly all be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And of course, don't forget to smack that like button. Let me know what you guys think of this deal. Do you think it's happening? Do you think it's not happening? Are you excited about the news on Saturday? I'll hopefully get that video up as soon as the panel's done. Peace out. I'll see you later, alligators. Bye-bye, guys.